Hello there and welcome to this Napoleonic battle report. This is part 5 of a mini campaign series I've been running called 8 Hours of the 100 Days, which is loosely based around the Battle of Waterloo. And for those who've watched the previous 4 parts to this, basically the idea behind the campaign was that I did have, because I've been painting a lot, I did have quite a backlog of Napoleonic figures, both plastic and metal miniatures to paint up. And I decided to use this campaign scenarios as a way of painting up models for each of the different parts, and then slowly build my force up ready for a big grand finale battle. So I've been doing that over the last few months, and this is the final kind of game before the main battle. And as the title of the video says, it's Clash of Cavalry. So I've been busily painting lots of horses, which is always a pain, but I've finally got now a brigade of French cavalry and a brigade of Allied cavalry done. So the premise for this scenario is that this is a valley. It's by where all the action's been taking place, all the skirmishing action over the last few battle reports. And the French commander has sent a brigade of cavalry up into the valley to just check any flanking manoeuvres from the Allies. And lo and behold, he discovers that yes, the Allies had actually sent their own cavalry brigade into the valley to do the same. So a bit of a straightforward scenario, basically cav on cav. Let's see what happens. So I'll go over to the forces now and we can see what I've been painting. Okay, so they're the forces and they're already deployed. So we've got the French down this end of the valley, we've got the Allies down that end of the valley. So I'll just run through what I've been doing and what I've been painting. So this is the French cavalry brigade. So on this side we've got the 3rd and 4th Lancers. Now, what I do when I'm playing on a 6x4 table is I reduce the cavalry down to 3 stands. I still think it looks really impressive as a brigade, but takes up half the space. And when you're playing on a 6x4 table, I've found when you've got full cavalry regiments, it does take up too much space. But I still think it looks pretty impressive anyway, so that's how I do it. So that's the 3rd and 4th Lancers, and then we've got the 7th and the 7th Hussars in the front here, and the 3rd Chasseurs. We'll have seen the Hussars in one of the previous battle reports, so they're back for some action. But as you can see, I've been painting quite a lot of the French cavalry. I have got the full regiments as well painted, so yeah, so you only see really half of what the work I've been doing. And the French commander's there. And then on the hill here, we've got 2 line artillery batteries who are covering the valley as well. And I'll talk about what they're doing in the scenario in a minute. Down for the Allies, we've got basically Brunswick, contingent of Brunswick cavalry. So we've got the Uhlans here, which are basically Lancers. And again, a full regiment. Actually, at Waterloo, there was only a squadron of these, but I'm basically gone for a full regiment because why not? And they look really cool. I really like those. And then we've got the Brunswick Hussars behind there as well. That's another regiment of Hussars. And they're supported by some horse artillery. Now, the artillery is not running away. I always face them backwards when they're limbered. So they're limbered at the moment, ready to go. And on this side, we've got the Scots Greys. So these are dragoons, and also the 6 Inniskilling dragoons as well, and the commander, and a 9-pounder from the battery from the Royal Horse Artillery. So these are obviously dragoons, and there's slightly lighter cavalry here, 2 artillery. So it's fairly evenly matched across the board. In terms of deployment, the Allies deployed first, so the French deployed the Lancers opposite to the dragoons, and the light cavalry opposite the light cavalry. So I'm just going to run over the scenario rules and then we'll get on with the game. Okay, so in terms of the scenario today, if you've watched any of the previous games in this mini-series, you'll know I'm running a very, very straightforward and simple campaign reward system based around major victories, minor victories and losses. So for today's game, very straightforward. For a major victory, one side has got to break the other's cavalry. So each side's got 4 cavalry regiments in their brigade. So if you can either destroy or shake 3 of the 4, that brigade will be broken. So that's a major victory. But there's also a bit of a side game going on between the artillery. So the idea is the artillery will be in a bit of a duel. And if one side can break the other's artillery batteries, there's 2 in each. So if you can break both of them, then or destroy, shake, whatever, then that's a minor victory. So there's a major victory and a minor victory up for grabs in this final game. Okay, so that's pretty much it. At the end of the game, I'll do the campaign summary as I've been doing, see the results, which will obviously affect the final game. Now, we'll just do a quick live roll off for who's going first. So blue dice are French, the red dice are for the Allies. So Allies get turn 1. Okay, so that's the end of turn 1 for the Allies. I forgot to mention command ratings. So both the French commander and the British commander, or the Allied commander, are command rating 8, and I've reduced all of the ranges by half. So cavalry and horse artillery move 9 inches for one move, and in terms of shooting ranges, the horse artillery is normally 36, so that's down to 18, and the line artillery is normally 48, so it's down to 24. So how did it go? So not too bad. The Royal Horse Artillery managed to get 2 moves and a limber, and that just gets them within medium range of that battery there. So just over half range, just inside 9 inches. The Dragoons got 1 move up. The Brunswick got 1 move on his horse artillery, and then the Hussars and the Uhlans got 2 moves. So just moving up towards the valley. So the dust clouds are approaching the French. So we have got a shooting phase, so I'll come back for that. It's very straightforward. So at this range, you get 2 shots. And because they're shooting at deployed artillery, they're not a clear target. So that's going to be normally hitting on 4s. So it's going to be 2 shots hitting on 5s. Nothing there. So that's the end of Allied turn 1. Over to French turn 1. Okay, so that's the end of turn 1 movement for the French, and we're not messing about. The whole brigade basically has galloped down the valley, 2 moves. The commander wanted to make sure he left a bit of a gap here for his artillery, just so we can get at least 1 turn of shooting off, and maybe soften up some of the cavalry, particularly over here, as we've got some Uhlans, some lancers heading towards light cavalry here. So yeah, that's the end of the movement. So we'll head over to shooting. Okay, so decided to make both batteries here fire across at the Uhlans. They're just in range at 24. I think they're 23 inches to the edge here. So it's a long range shot. But to be fair, they could be shooting at the artillery, but they're deployed, so they're going to be hitting on 5s anyway there. So decided to see if we can just soften up some of this cavalry. So we're getting 2 shots, 1 for each battery at long range. So getting 1 shot hitting on 5s. That is a cracking bit of artillery work by the French there. So 2 hits on the Uhlans there. So it is at long range, so that gives them -1 to their morale saves. So they'll be saving on a 5. They make 1, fail 1, so that was worth it. So that is 1 casualty on to the Uhlans. Okay, so that's the end of the French turn 1. So we're heading over to Allies turn 2. Okay, so that's the end of turn 2 for the Allies, and as suspected with a cavalry engagement, it's going to get bloody very quickly. So the Allied commander had a good turn of rolling, so he ordered the Scots Drays to charge into the 3rd Lancers, and as part of the same order, he ordered the Inniskillings to move up in support. He rolled enough to do that, and the French commander decided to countercharge with the 3rd Lancers, and mainly because although he's now not supported, you do get a lance bonus for charging, which affects morale saves. So considering they're up against Dragoons, he decided that he needed that lance bonus for this round of combat, rather than just having the support for combat results. So that's happened there. Over this side, decided to hold with the cavalry down here, and then just basically see if we can get the artillery to move up. And again, that's because the Uhlans have got the lance bonus again if they can countercharge, but we wanted to try and get a bit of fire into these before then. So we managed to get a roll to get the Brunswick artillery horse artillery to move up, and the unlimbered as well. So we're going to get 1 turn of shooting into here. Hopefully that's tactically pretty good. So we're going to head over to shooting and come back for that. So starting over here again. So once again, we're getting 2 shots hitting on 5s because they're in medium range still. That's no hits there, so not particularly great. And then over this side, we've got the Brunswick horse artillery shooting at the Hussars. They're just outside medium range, so it's just going to be 1 dice hitting on 5s, because technically that's now long range. But they do hit, so that is again a 5 to save, because it's 4 usually, because they're being hit by artillery at long range, it's -1. But they do make it, so yeah, that's good saving from the French. Okay, so we're going to come back for some hand-to-hand combat over here. Okay, so I've come around to this side of the board to catch this action. So a few things going on here. So the Dragoons get 8 hand-to-hand combat dice. They also get the Ferocious Charge special rule, which basically means they can re-roll all failed hand-to-hand rolls in the first round of a combat where they've charged or have counter-charged. So these guys are pretty deadly in that respect. However, the French get 7 hand-to-hand dice, being lancers, and they get the lance special rule. So the dragoons will be saving any morale saves on 5s rather than 4s. So the French do get some advantage to having the reach of the lance. Okay, so we'll see how this goes, but I'm sure it's going to be very bloody, as it normally is for cavalry encounters. So we'll start with the British as they charge. So as they charged in, they're going to be hitting on 3s. So they're getting 8 dice, hitting on 3s, re-rolling failed hits. Which is good because they failed a few there. Yep, they only actually hit with 3, so that's pretty poor. So 5 re-rolls. And there we go, there's the advantage of that ferocious charge rule. So that's 8 hits by the Scots Greys. So the French have got 7 attacks in reply. Again, hitting on 3s though, because they counter-charged. So we'll see how we get on. But no re-rolls. And that is 5. So that's 5 hits for the French. And it was 8 for the British. So we'll do the British saves first. So we've got 5 saves over here. So these are going to be saving on 5s because of the lance rule. This is where it could even things out. It does, that's only 1 save. So that is actually 4 casualties. Oh, cavalry combat is brutal. So that's 4 casualties for the British. And then we've got 8 for the French on 4s. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 for the French. So I told you, it evens itself out. So that is 4 casualties for the French. However, as we know, the Scots Greys were supported. So in terms of combat results, it's a draw in terms of casualties. However, these will get +1 for being supported, +2, +3. So they actually got quite a lot of supports for the artillery, but also they get +1. They get a D1, which is basically 1 for being heavy cavalry as well. So basically the British win. So the French will be testing. So we'll do that now. So it's going to be 2 dice. Because they're 1 over their stamina, stamina is 3, it's going to be 2 dice -1. Oh dear, so they are destroyed. So that's the first combat result. So they are destroyed. So we'll come back for what the Allies are going to do next with that. Okay, I've just tidied up the board there. So as you can see, cavalry combat can be particularly brutal. So so the 3rd Lancers are gone, they're history. But the Scots Greys are now shaken because they had 4 casualties, so I've taken 1 back, so they're shaken. Now they could have done a sweeping advance, but decided to stay in formation, keep the cover from the dragoons, and just see how the next turns play out. So yeah, so that was brutal. So over to French turn 2. Okay, so it's end of movement on turn 2 for the French. Not a lot happened. Decided to try and charge the Hussars and the Chasseurs into the Uhlans, but failed his roll. So obviously they couldn't move either, so they're stuck. So over to shooting. Okay, so the 2 artillery units here are going to be shooting down into the Scots Greys, who are already shaken. So this could be quite brutal again because they're in medium range now, so they're getting 2 shots each. So that's 4 shots into the, might as well do them at the same time. So there's 4 shots in there at medium range, so hitting on 4s. That's 3 hits and a disorder. This could be bad because it's -2 to their saves at medium range. So this is 3 saves of 6 required. None. So that is 3 casualties. So that puts them up to 6. So because they've had excess casualties from shooting, we've got a test. So that's -3 for the casualties, plus they've taken casualties from artillery, so that's -4 from this roll. So a 4 becomes a 1, so they are destroyed. So despite the success in the last round, seeing off the 3rd Lancers, it's obviously left them a bit too shaken, and the artillery has pounded into them. So unfortunately the Scots Greys are leaving the field as well. So effectively that's 1-1 for the battle. So the French are back in it. So over to turn 3 for the Allies. Okay, so that's end of movement on turn 3 for the Allies. So not the greatest of rolls. Got some movement off. Tried to charge the Uhlans in, but only got one move, so they've just moved up to here. And the same for the dragoons, for the Inniskillings, they only got one move up to there, so they didn't quite make the charge. And the Brunswick horse artillery here managed to drag their gun up a little bit closer, so hopefully get a shot off this turn. So we'll go over to shooting. Okay, so starting down here with the Brunswick horse artillery, they're going to shoot at the lancers, the fourth lancers. So they are just at long range, so that's 1 dice, and it's -1 for long range. But also because of how they're positioned, they can't see the whole unit, so they are going to be getting another -1 for not being a clear target. So that's actually a 6, so 1 shot hitting on a 6. No, didn't expect that either. And then over here, the Royal Horse Artillery again will shoot here, 2 dice, hitting on 5s, shooting at deployed artillery. Nothing again, so the artillery is whiffing completely for the Allies. There's no hand-to-hand combat, so we head over to turn 3 for the French. Okay, so that's into French turn 3 movement. So because we both of the Hussars and also the 4th Lancers were in initiative range, they did initiative charges in. So we had 2 counter charges, so the Uhlans counter-charge, and the Inniskillings also counter-charged. Interestingly, over this side, the Chasseurs and the Hussars are actually in supporting range. So despite the charging here, they're still close enough to support. But we've got a bit of shooting over here with the French artillery, so we'll come back for that. So starting over with this battery on this side, going to be shooting back at the Royal Horse Artillery. So again, they're in medium range as well. So again, 2 dice, but shooting at deployed artillery, so it's 5s. Nothing there. And then this artillery unit here can shoot at the Brunswick, but they're at long range. So again, 1 dice, they're at long range is -1, but also the deployed artillery, so it's going to be a 6. Nothing. So again, not too much going on the artillery front. So back over to the hand-to-hand. This could be a brutal round. So we'll start down here with the Uhlans and the Hussars. Now the Uhlans have got 1 casualty already, but obviously because they counter-charged, they get their lance bonus. So we've got 6 dice for the Hussars, who charged in, and we've got 7 dice for the Uhlans. So we'll roll for the French first. So it's 6 attacks, and these are hitting on 3s. There's no other rules. So that's not bad though. That is 5 hits for the French. And then we've got 7 attacks for the Uhlans, hitting on 3s as well, because they're counter-charged. That's just 4. So interestingly, despite slight numerical advantage in dice and attacks, the French were better off there. So the French has got 4 saves of 5s again because of the lances. So they make 1, so that's 3 casualties for the French. And then we've got 5 saves for 4 for the Brunswick, and 2 casualties for the Brunswick. So that's 3 casualties for the French, 2 for the Brunswick, both supported. So the Brunswick win that combat. So the French will be testing, so we'll do that now. That's a 9, there's no other modifiers, but the way it works with black powder, even though they've got 9, the cavalry always make 1 move, one retirement move. So I'll do that, but also these would test if these are broken, because they're not broken, they're okay. So I'll just do that move and I'll come back. Okay, so I've just tidied up the board there. So the French the 7th Hussars have now retired 1 move, and they're now shaken because they've got 3 casualties. But also in that combat, the Uhlans took 2 casualties, so they're also shaken. So in terms of their next options, they couldn't advance on a retiring unit, because you can sometimes advance onto a retiring unit and engage again, because the chasseurs are in the way. Because they're cavalry, they could make a sweeping advance and charge, but because again they're shaken, they can't charge into this unit either. So these are stuck here, these are now going to be staying there. So we'll go over to the Lancers and Dragoons combat. Okay, so we're back to the Lancers and Dragoons. So it's the same as before. Now I did forget 1 rule last time, is that the British Cavalry also have this gallop at anything rule. So basically, because the Scots Greys had won the previous combat, they should have made, they had to make a sweeping advance move. They couldn't charge into another enemy, but they have to make that sweeping advance move forward if they can. I forgot that, but it doesn't really matter, because to be honest with you, where they were positioned, they just got destroyed by the artillery, and I think that would have been the result anyway. So I don't think it made a difference, but I must remember this time. If they do, then they've got to make that sweeping advance rule if the British win. Okay, so Once again, 8 hand-to-hand dice with ferocious charge, so re-rolling dice, and 7 dice for the lancers with the lance rule. So we'll do the French first because it's their turn. So we've got 7 attacks hitting on 3s because they charged. So that is 5 hits for the French. And we've got the British, so we've got 8 on dice hitting on 3s, re-rolling. Let's re-roll these 2. Okay, so that is going to be 7 hits for the British. So let's do the French first. So the French are saving on 4s. So that's 1, 2, 3 casualties for the French. And the British are saving on 5s because of the Lancers. That's against the advantage of the Lancers, even though they're stronger in some respects. So that's 4 casualties for the British. So let's work this one out then. So, yeah, so it's 4 casualties on the British, 3 on the French. No supports from either side, but these get D1 for being heavy cavalry. So that would bring them up to 4 as well. So it's actually a draw. Now, what happens here is because both units are now shaken, I'll just put mark on both of them. They're both shaken in this combat, so they'll both be testing because effectively it's now a drawn combat. Okay, so I'll do the French first. They're going to be 2 dice. There's no minuses because they're just at their stamina limit, so let's see what they get. It's 11, but as previous, because they're cavalry, they're mimicking 1 retirement move, so I can do that. And then let's see what happens to the British. Now the British have got 1 excess casualty, so it'll be 2 dice minus 1. 9 becomes 8, so it's same for them. So basically, they've clashed together, both had a good time, and now retreating 1. So I'll just tidy that up and come back. Okay, so I've just reorganised the board, and that is actually the end of the game, because now those 2 units are both shaken. The British, or the Allied brigade is now broken because the Scots Greys were destroyed, and the Skillings are shaken, and the Uhlans are shaken, so that's broken. And obviously the 3rd Lancers were destroyed, the 4th are now shaken, and the 7th Hussars are shaken. So both brigades were broken on the same turn, so that's a draw, which is a fair result, I think. So yeah, really enjoyed that. That was quite fun. Nice, quick, brutal game. I do think cavalry do add a lot of dynamics to Black Powder, and as you can see, it can be pretty heavy-handed on each other when they get going. I think the artillery added a little bit of flavour, and also probably influenced the result because obviously it was the artillery that destroyed the Scots Guards. So without that, perhaps the Allies could have gone on to get a victory. So yeah, it's a draw. There's no minor victories because both artillery units are still intact, and because these are both broken, that's a game as a draw. So what I'll do is I'll go over to the campaign summary now and see what that did on the results. Okay, so that's the end of the campaign as such. I've played 5 games now, and for each game I've been painting models, so I'm pretty much up to speed now with where I wanted to be for my Napoleonic collection, so the campaign's been worthwhile in that respect. This was the very basic campaign reward system that I set up for basically major victories, minor victories and losses. So I've totted that all up now, so because it was a draw in the last game, that classes as a minor victory for each of them. So now the Anglo-Allies have got 2 major victories and 1 minor victory, plus 2 losses, and then the French 1 major victory, 2 minor victories and 2 losses. So 2 losses each and 3 victories. Anglo-Allies get a slight advantage. And if you've watched the other games, how it works is for major victories I can get to choose off this chart here, victory credits, so I can basically give one of my units for the Anglo-Allies or the French, I can give one of them some of these attributes basically. Can't use it for elite units already, so if you're already elite +4, whatever, you wouldn't want elite +5. So if you're a guard unit or the 95th, etc., you've already got reliable, so you wouldn't give that. You can't. So this is more for line regiments, for cavalry regiments, for some artillery as well. And then for minor victories, you have to roll a d6 and then that chooses. And then for the losses, you roll a d6 and you get some off that. So I'm not going to do that now, but when it comes to the final battle, what I'll do is I'll do the start of the battle, I'll roll on the various charts and assign these various victory credits and loss penalties to those units. So yes, it's all good. Okay, so the last thing to do now will be the final battle. So I'm working on that as we speak. But I hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers.